Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. We've got another upcoming guitar auction by Gardner Holgate. Keep in mind while we're going through all these different listings, the price that's listed is exclusive of the 22% buyer's premium that they'll throw on top of that. So while £400 might seem really good for a Les Paul Jr., you still have to add another $100 on top of that and shipping costs, if you're unable to pick it up anyways. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. So our first three here, we have some 2010s models and an early 2002. This one has a pretty nice top, but this is from the period where Gibson was doing heavy weight relieving. Sometimes they're chambered, sometimes they're modern weight relief. It really just depends on the particular year that you're looking at. So whether you're going to enjoy one of these comes down to personal preference, but hey, at least it has one of the really nice Canadian-made TKL cases that still has the case shroud. I don't think that's original to this guitar. That's generally early 2000s. Very nice cases though. Well, this one's estimated between 800 to 1,200 pounds. That seems really cheap. The high estimate is around 1,600 US. Once you add your buyer's premium into that, that does seem very accurate at about 2,000. Kind of the same story on this Les Paul Standard too. But it was just a couple of days ago I was telling you guys about the very confusingly named models of the Henry J era. You've got the Classic Custom and the Custom Classic. This is another notorious example of something very confusing. The Junior Special. Because a Junior means this, a single P90'd Les Paul Junior, and a Special means this, a dual P90'd wrap tailpiece Les Paul Special. This one is kind of just a combination of them all. Hey, at least it has a really cool flame maple top though. It's just a flat top Les Paul. You've got two humbuckers here. Not looking so good on our setup right there. If the saddles are all pushed to the back like that, that could mean we have some intonation issues. But if it intonates just fine like that, okay, that's fine. It's just kind of a warning sign of issues to come in the future, because if you need to move that saddle any farther back, you're gonna have to swap out your bridge for something that has a little bit more wide travel, or just completely move your bridge in general. Of course, it could also just mean the guitar's not properly set up right now, but 400 to 600. Okay, I guess after you add your premium, that's about right. You also have to remember this auction is located overseas, and guitars do tend to sell for a little bit more over there. And that means if you're a USA buyer in this auction, it's going to be a little bit harder to get it back to the US. Our second group of guitars have some interesting ones. So the melody makers of the mid-2000s, they can be pretty cool. This one, not exactly my favorite iteration. One of my favorite ones is the 2014 one, because it was basically a Les Paul Special, just in a really slimmed down format. You had the P90 pickups and all that. This one, it's like a 50s style reissue with the single coils. Kind of a goofy headstock on it. But this 2001 custom, looks like it's had some modifications. The pickups have been swapped out on it. That headstock looks a little bit funny. And that neck has yellowed a little bit, way more than the rest. I wonder if that's just the lighting situation. But like this entire side, it's like the sweat absorption or something. I mean, that's right where the player's hand would rub against it if he was more of a lead player. All right, let's see. Do they have the headstock anywhere? Doesn't look like it. It actually has an early 90s case too, because they only did this headstock wedge for a very short period of time before they got rid of it. I personally don't like them. I think they break headstocks. I actually had a buyer one time when they purchased a guitar ask me to cut that out of the case. And what it is, you just have to cut the felt right here, and then it's like a foam block in there. It's pretty easy to take out. Now, I'm sure this guitar is authentic. It's just that logo looks strange from that angle. I think it's because the headstock is angled back, and we're taking it from a direct-on approach. But it looks like they're estimating that to be a high of 2,700 US. And I guess after buyer's premium, that makes sense. But I'm sure a lot of people want me to talk about this thing. So this is a 2005 Crimson Division Les Paul, where they've given it the flamed inlays. And Justin Hawkins of The Darkness actually ordered a few of these. Now, it's not clear to me if this is actually his, because his change hands all the time. I remember at one point in time on Reverb, there was a 3 guitar collection set of his. And I actually wanted to talk about those in a separate episode, because that guy has some really interesting custom orders, but here's a quick sneak peek at it. So it's a silver burst, but it's a rim burst style silver burst. Well, not a complete one, but it doesn't quite have the teardrop shape that I like. So I'm not personally a big fan of this one, but the flame inlay is pretty cool. But interestingly enough, a black back, just like my Sparkle Silver Burst that you can check out in this review and demo. And it looks like we've got some finish checking on this. That just happens on Sparkle Gibsons. And it looks like it was factory ordered with a Bigsby. So how much do they want? They're estimating between 2,000 and 4,000 pounds. That doesn't seem so far out there. I could actually see that one going for more. A lot of times these things will get listed around 10 grand. But it doesn't look like this was actually his. Maybe it was just custom ordered like his. Yeah, because his 3 were done in 2003, and the other colors were the pink sparkle and the bullion gold. Here's a quick sneak peek at these, but I do want to save those just for their own episode. Next batch of guitars, we got some vintage stuff. 73 SG Special, you don't see those too often. I mean, you see juniors all the time. That's a 1956, ooh, and one of these little guys. I always see these at guitar auctions, but I never see anybody actually use them. They're so fascinating to me. It's like an ES Les Paul before that even existed, way before then. I would really like to try one of these one day because they're just so fascinating to me. Ooh, and that one has the original case too. I love the color, how it's faded as well. But you can see your estimates right here. I don't think I've seen a black SG Special from the early 70s before. Did they even go as far as giving it black pickup covers? I'm not sure if that's factory or not, but I love the aged knobs. You've got the harmonica bridge on here, very characteristic horns of the era, but this really screams Tony Iommi to me, even though it's not exactly what his is. But what is going on back here? Something like ate the finish, and instead of leaving it bare, it looks like somebody touched it up with some like black spray paint. I think that's what this extra outline is, just where the paint accidentally got on top of the original finish. But you've got the volute, you've got the Kluson style tuners. Definitely a non-original case that doesn't fit it well, but a case is a case. That's kind of a cool player's grade guitar. Ooh, I really like that. Is that black binding? Yes, it is. I remember talking about this before in an episode. It's one of the few guitars from this era, besides a few white guitars, that actually had the black binding, but then you also have this. I mean, it just looks like the finish came over top of it, right? But I think right here you can make the argument that no, that's not the case. So here's a different one, and it's got the same thing going on. It's really hard to tell, but it does have that black binding and then that. These are needlessly fancy. Then other ones were just unbound in general. There are a lot of spec changes in this time period. It really depends what year you're buying. Another thing you'll notice where the inlays are different on this, but I really don't think I've seen an ebony one of those before. That's a cool guitar. And estimated only at like 14, I think with buyer's premium would be around what, 16, 17? It's pretty beat up, but it's cool. The next 3, we got a 2013 Gibson Memphis 59 reissue. Kind of cool, but not a lot to talk about unless it's got some exceptional wood grain figuring, which, hey, that's a bird's eye top. You don't see that too often. Back has some stuff going on too. But oh, Eric Clapton Crossroads 64 335. I'm sure there's somebody looking for this custom shop reissue. Oh yeah, I remember this one. It's the one that has the stamp. And they aged the case to look like his. Ah, that's a shame. They don't have a close-up of it. I believe it's the Hare Krishna. I think that's a 335 that'll just need a dedicated review and demo one day. But holy cow, 7,000 to 10,000 pound estimate. So at the top, you're looking at roughly 14,000 plus your buyer's premium. So that takes it nearly to 17,000. I mean, he's a popular guy, but is that what they go for? Well, I guess that's the highest end one that's been listed. There's one here for 13,000, but those are just asking prices. Looks like a few have sold in the neighborhood of just a little bit more than 10,000. Yeah, that's one of the most valuable 335s that I've run across in a while. But there we go, there's a good close-up of the stamp that he put on his. I definitely hope to review one of those one day. But here we go, 79 Firebrand. That's impossible. Firebrands didn't exist in 1979. Let's take a whoa. Huh? This one's been modified, that's for sure. It looks like the pickups have been swapped out to me. I can't see the T's on the bobbins, but maybe when we're zooming in during editing process, you'll be able to see them. But they just don't quite look right to me. The pickup rings have been replaced. Bridge and tailpiece could be original. Looks like our knobs are okay, but what is this? Did somebody cut a section out of this guitar and then graft another piece in? And we've got a new switch in here, so that definitely means the pickups have been replaced. That's likely like a coil splitter. Looks like the back is about the way I would expect. The tuners have been swapped. Oh, don't tell me they're not going to show us the headstock. I mean, fantastic that it comes with the Gen 2 chainsaw case. Yeah, you can definitely see something happen there. Oh, a flying V the Paul. And like, I have a hard time believing these are just like dots or dings? Like, are those wooden dowels put into the body for some reason? I doubt it, but if somebody chopped this thing up at one point in time, who knows what else they did. It obviously had to have been refinished at some point. Okay, so it looks like normally the Paul would look like this. It's got the walnut headstock. They don't actually have a veneer until later on in the series. So this one, it looks like somebody didn't like the golden silkscreen logo and they wanted it to look more regular. I mean, they're refinishing the whole thing anyways, so they made their own bootleg Gibson logo for it. Oh, and apparently at one point in time, this entire guitar was black, but this is a 1979 The Paul. I mean, it's kind of cool, has an interesting story. How much do they think it would sell for? Pretty low estimate, between 300 to 500 pounds. So with buyer's premium around 900? It really depends what pickups are in there and how badly somebody likes the modifications that have been done to it. 900's a bit high. I can definitely see that selling towards like the mid-range of their estimate, because this case right here is worth a good 250 to 300 at least. Whoa! Excuse me? Rebuilt and refinished by the Nigel Thornberry? Oh no, wait, Nigel Thornberry. Oh man, that's almost worth owning just for that funny fact. Yeah, it is indeed an old refinish from 91, but they had to piece that wood back together. All right, let's move on to our next batch of guitars. Looks like 2006 SG Standard. Not much to talk about here. A really cool 335. Let's see, is there anything cool with this Marauder? Yeah, just looks like general wear and tear. No crazy flame neck or body or anything like that. But ooh, this will probably go for a lot. The CF100. Starting to see a comeback in the use of being a signature guitar for some people, or at least something very similar. Like the Dave Mustaine's kind of loosely based off of this whenever we'll see that. They're kind of interesting guitars, a piece of history. But check this out, a Les Paul Studio in an electric blue finish. The early 2000s truly was a gem in Gibson history. The standards were fantastic, the limited edition colors were kind of cool. This one, it's just interesting, and as a studio, it gives you kind of a break of the monotony of the regular colors you find on studios. I think this would look better with some binding though. And in today's given market, that seems about right. Next up, we got a couple of acoustics. Here's a 64 SJN. Southern Jumbo. Fun fact, I did own one of these once. Because as I had purchased my vintage Stratocaster and vintage Les Paul, I thought, I need a really good acoustic guitar. So I got one of these and I just decided, no, this isn't worth the money. I think I paid like $2,500 for it. But that was what, in 2016 or so? So I ended up actually sending it back to the store. That was just when, I was a teenager buying the cool guitars that I wanted, that I had saved up my money working my multiple jobs for. It had a lovely deep sound, but it just wasn't quite what I was looking for. My Taylor definitely worked out better for me. But I actually ended up buying a Spotlight Special from that same shop about a year or two later. But here it is, estimated between 25 to 35,000 pounds. So with buyer's premium, quite a bit of money there. But hey, we were just talking about these a couple of days ago in my Gibson US1 review and demo. So this is one of the versions of the U2 that actually got the meat cleaver headstock. But does it have binding? Yes, indeed, it does have binding. And somebody made a joke in that video about the U2 having the edge bound. U2, the edge. Now we've got a couple of ES-330 styled instruments. So 330 here, 345, a little bit fancier. Let's take a look at this. We've covered quite a few 330s on the show quite recently, but I don't think I've ever had one of these. I believe I have a new one on order that I wanted to check out during the unboxing segment, but that thing has taken a while to get here. Well, that's not the original case, but I love the color on that. Nice and faded. Here's a nice close-up of that. You even get your Veritone switch here. Love the golden bonnet reflector knobs. Yeah, 64, so you should have some good pickups in here. And now we're moving on to Stratocaster land. We'll take a look at these 6 at a time. So Fender Prodigy, we did the reissued Prodigies, if you want to check that video out. But the one that most calls my attention is the Splattercaster. Every single one of these was different. I mean, some have similar vibes, but I am kind of waiting for like the right one of these to review. Because some of them are cool, some of them are not so cool. This is one that I'd put it somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't love it enough to buy it, but I could see why somebody might like it. has a little bit too much red in my opinion. I don't like the blood splattered guitars. I think they're just distasteful, but I'm pretty conservative in that aspect in guitar cosmetics. I like the more traditional stuff, but you know, looking at it from this angle, it just looks like a clown got ran over. But it's got a pretty low estimate of 300 to 500 pounds. That seems to be about right. Next up, we got a cool 50th anniversary Stratocaster in gold, a Baja 60 Strat, modified, what? Modified 2001 Tom DeLonge Stratocaster. Why? Why would you do that? Tom DeLonge Strats are very, very desirable. Originally, it would have looked something like this. A Seymour Duncan Invader, you have a Moto pickguard, nice bright finish, only one knob. They turned it into what every single other Stratocaster in the world looks like. That's a shame. But these things can sell for crazy prices. Like, there was a time somebody paid $4,000, $2,500. I mean, generally, you're looking in the mid 1,000 range up to the 2,000. These kind of seem like outlier points. I'm not sure what was going on with those. But this one has a very low estimate, so maybe check that one out. It wouldn't be that hard to restore it. I'm not sure what's underneath the pickguard on these, but getting a Duncan Invader, that'd be easy enough. You just have to find an original style pickguard. Now we've got some basses, a precision bass, an American Standard Telecaster, ooh, a 64 Tele, that's nice, but I think the true winner here, out of all the basses and guitars, is this weird freaky thing. The Telecaster Elite. I'll do a review and demo one day. They basically just got special pickups and they have those brass bridges. That seriously just looks photoshopped on there, doesn't it? Like it's oddly higher def than the rest of the entire photo. But I love the color. I just kind of wish the headstock had a matching finish. Is that really gold? Wow, they really blinged this thing out. I thought maybe it was an aged white, but it even has binding on the top. It's kind of like a Cabronita Tele in a roundabout way as far as the pickguard goes anyways, but very similar to a Les Paul, and then you had their exclusive pickups in these guitars. And of course, you can't forget the cool knobs. The closest review and demo I have to this guitar would be the Walnut Stratocaster that Fender lost money creating. And in this batch of 6, okay, they've got some of the 10 for 15 things. That's one of the more boring ones, I would say. That looks suspiciously clean for a 78 Stratocaster. I'm sure there's a story on that. But these two catch my eye the most. So this is a limited edition Tim Armstrong Hellcat, featuring a solid top. Well, that's kind of what most people want, but you know, Hellcat having cats that look like they're scared, no, okay. And skulls? I can't say it's my favorite guitar in the world, but it's got some interesting inlays. Looks like they made them for multiple years. I've just never heard of these before. I think it looks better in black. But this Rosewood Tele, okay, so it's one of the 80s made in Japan ones. These generally sell between like 2,000 to 3,000, so I think their estimate is about right once you do the conversions and add in premiums. But just because it wasn't made in USA does not mean it's not a collectible guitar. Because the original run Rosewood Teles are ridiculously expensive. I would like to own one day though, because I just think they're cool outside of the Beatles reference. Oh, ugh. Not that one though, ew. I would not want to own that at all. So what's happening here is the body might be starting to slightly separate, or one piece is getting bigger than the other. It was not stored properly. You can see right there. Ah, that's a darn shame. I don't think I've ever seen that on one of these, because that's what's cool about these Rosewood Teles. They're actually sandwiches of wood, kind of like the pancake bodies of the Norland era of Gibson. You've got a maple stripe running in between them. This one just not so good. Maybe that's why it's got a cheap estimate. What was that? At the top end of the market? Oh, they're really thinking somebody's going to pay $24 for that. I doubt it, unless they don't actually look at the listing. Next in our lot of 6s, we've got a couple of Squires here. A vintage 61 Strat. Some guitars so cheap they had to lump them together. I would say, let's look at the 61. Not quite sure what's going on with our bridge there. I think we're missing a saddle. It's not even strung up. The frets just look demolished on this thing. It was clearly played heavily. Somebody's got all the springs back here. They didn't use the trem too much. but yet it's got all the stuff. Why don't they have strings on it? It's probably just an auction selling it as is. They didn't want to take some time to put another saddle or two on there, but this looks right for a refret. I don't know, maybe the frets aren't as bad as they seem. A good cleanup job might make this graveyard actually look halfway decent, but yeah, I would plan on refretting that. But it certainly has that aged look that everybody wants, but estimated between 5,000 to 8,000 pounds. I can't really comment on the price. I don't do too much in that market. And I wouldn't say there's too much to look at in these last 6. So that was just page 1 of 10. So you're welcome to keep watching if you want. But we're just kind of gonna start going faster here. So it looks like there are a couple of Rickenbackers if you're interested in checking those out. I do have some reviews and demos of Rickenbackers if you're interested. Looks like we got a couple of the classic 70s basses in here. Oh, it's one of those Gretsch Broadcasters. The reason why the Telecaster is called the Telecaster instead of the Broadcaster. I don't think I've ever actually taken a minute to look at these. It's like elephant ears right here. It even's got the big cheeks of an elephant. But then you've got a Bigsby labeled Gretsch, 0 fret nut and all. Multi-piece neck looking pretty good with a heel cap. Kind of an interesting guitar. And now we've got some frameless guitars from the early 2000s and one from the 60s. But first, let's take a look at this. What? This is why I like guitar auctions, and why I think people like watching these auction videos is you learn about models you've never seen before. Like, this looks like this strange shrunken down bass guitar. Like, the headstock is obnoxiously small. Maybe it's just the angle of the photo, but I like how symmetric this is. You've got a switch here, you've got a knob there, you've got an F-hole, F-hole. They didn't quite match the knobs, but you can pretty much slice it down the middle and get almost the same guitar. Yeah, except for the headstock. But this thing catches my attention. Reminds me of the dark wine burst finish that Gibson toyed with very briefly in the mid-90s. It's a weird Coronado-esque shape, you know, before the Coronados came in existence. Really long extended F-holes on these. Interesting bridge, slanted single coils. It reminds me of like one of those guitar organ things. And you've got all the slider switches here to likely give you different tones, and you've got different knobs here, and a very long arm for your trem system. That's kind of a cool guitar. How much do they think it'll go for? Oh, whoa, only 300 to 500? Looks like there's one on Reverb right now for 850. It's got very similar stuff going on. Does not have a pick guard over here. Has a tiny Stratocaster arm on it. That looks so out of place. But the condition is not so good on this, so who knows, maybe they'll get it. It's an interesting guitar. And who can forget the K effector? You can check out my review and demo if you want to know more about those. I'm sure they sounded better back when everything was fully functioning, had fresh capacitors and everything, but hey, take a look at this 1984 Yamaha Lord Player. Very clearly a Gibson Les Paul ripoff. Heck, they even went as far as copying the open book headstock. You got a multi-piece body. The neck does not look half bad. The body shape's a little bit wrong, but Lord Player, that's good enough to get a chuckle. But then we break into a couple of Yamahas here, and even some Ibanez. So the old Ibanezes are actually really good. Like their lawsuit era days. Like here's a pretty convincing looking L5. I didn't even realize they did L5s. I knew they did really fancy Les Pauls, but not the arch tops. Not to mention the really pointy cutaway EDS 1275s. And it looks like this auction even has some Epiphones in here. It's kind of hard to look at the old Epiphones anymore. I'm so used to the new headstock looking so good. You look back on these things and it's like, yeah, well, what were they thinking? I'm sure they're still good guitars though, if you're not a cosmetic snob. And oh, nice. You don't see these too often. I just had somebody asking me about these, the 7-string Epiphones. They actually do hold value really well because there's just not a lot of 7-string options out there if you're a Gibson fan. I mean, there's a few, but generally the Gibson ones are really expensive, and even in the Epiphone lineup, the 7-strings, they just sell for good money. Most people just have them as part of their collections. Might not be the guitar that they play every day. But like here you can see one for selling for $1,000, here's one around 15. They just don't show up to the market too often. So I think they'll be surprised how much Lot 121 gets bid up to. Next up, we got some Tokai lawsuits, some Les Pauls. I want to take a look at the Firebird. I mean, you can tell the shape is just ever so slightly off, but I do like the Tokai headstock. That's kind of cool. Oh, now this bundle lot could be fun. 2 1970s Japanese LP type guitars, to include a sax. That's not nearly as fun as what it should be. Include a Saxon and an Avon by Rose Morris. Oh, okay, they're just telling us the brands. I thought you were getting two guitars that weren't pictured. Like, they look good, right? This one, anyways. This one, not so much. But the Saxon one actually looks, fairly convincing. It's trying to emulate an early 70s Les Paul custom. Not quite sure why they have those tuners on it, but whatever. Both bolt-on necks, likely plywood construction. Not the best guitars in the world, but who knows? Could be good. One last one to look at here. Here's a Harmony Marquise H732. Clearly a ripoff of the Paul. I kind of like it though, just for that fact. I think that is going to wrap it up for our episode today. You can check them out at gardnerholgate.co.uk, and this auction is taking place on the 8th of September 2021. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.